Hello and welcome back to GRC Uncensored. I'm Elliot Millman, your producer, alongside our host Kendra and Troy Fine, or maybe TJ. He seems to be a little friendly today, so I think we got TJ. And our wonderful guest, Evan Millman, who is currently the manager of GRC over at Abnormal AI and also an adjunct professor. Today, we don't know what we're going to talk about, so let's throw out TJ's favorite question and then go from there.
I do know what I want to talk about. I'll talk about Evan, the Millman's basketball career real quick. Because, Elliot, since you don't know who Karl Malone is, he played with one of the other greatest point guards of all time, John Stockton, who, if you remember, I told you about John Stockton. Do you remember where he went to college?
Absolutely not.
He went to Gonzaga.
If you told me 10 minutes ago, I still wouldn't remember.
But he went to Gonzaga. That's where you went.
Oh,
remember we talked about this. Okay, this was total butchered start by Elliot.
I love to insult
greatest
my alma mater.
Point guard, power forward duo to ever play the game of basketball. And he went to your school. Anyways. Oops. All right. Yeah. What's my question? Oh, yeah. So we're going to start off this episode real quick, Evan. It's a really tough one. So you got to be, it's hard. So you got to be, it's a serious question. What's the last thing you asked ChatGPT?
Ooh, that's a great question. The last thing I asked ChatGPT was to help me analyze a risk assessment report that I was working on finalizing last week. It was the last thing I did in ChatGPT.
Oh, wow. How did it do?
It did great. So basically, I had the report 75% of the way done with risks that were identified, stakeholders, what departments they were coming from, and I basically asked ChatGPT to help put numerical values to like inherent risk and residual risk, and essentially give me like a risk rating and decide which risks rose to the level of needing to be remediated.
Nice. What about you, Kendra or Elliot? You have any good ones? I think people only listen to our podcast just to figure out what ChatGPT ideas they can get at the beginning.
The actual last one that I did today was I'm interviewing for a GRC role, and so I just took the job description and threw it into ChatGPT, and I said, give me questions based off this, because who has the time? And it did a fantastic job. And I said, make it for senior level, give me red flags for each of the questions. And it was beautiful. So that's the last thing I put. But I think the reason that question is hard is because you have to toggle between, do I give my last personal ChatGPT or do I give my last work-related ChatGPT? But that actually was my last one this time. I'd have to pull up my personal one to see.
Yeah, I should just ask, what's a question you would like to share that you asked ChatGPT instead of the last?
No.
But no.
Oh, no. Put people on the spot.
What about you, Elliot? No. Elliot said no. We're just going to, he's probably asking who John Stockton is right now. I don't know. But
no, I already forgot again. We're good.
I asked a pretty good one. I said, I took Evan Millman's LinkedIn profile and I copied it to ChatGPT and I said, please give me some spicy GRC questions to ask Evan Millman today. That's exactly what
did it come up with?
What'd you say?
What did it come up with?
We'll find out, I guess. Maybe if I get to them, if I decide to ask them. Nothing spicy. It didn't really get personal. It was just like general GRC.
Yeah,
super funny. I had a conversation with a vendor last week who was telling me that they had listened to this podcast and they really loved that we did the AI question. And so he told me what his last one was, and he typed everything in his refrigerator into ChatGPT and was like, give me some menu options or things I can create. And I was like, oh, that's actually smart. But I think mine would just be like, go out to eat.
Go out to eat.
No, nothing.
Ketchup sandwich.
See, I do think people just watch for this question and then they tune out for the rest of the episode.
Maybe we need to start putting it at random intervals.
Yeah, we should put it in the middle. But anyways, Evan, why don't you tell people what you do at Abnormal AI? That's a good starting question since this is a GRC podcast. Why don't you tell people what you do in GRC there?
So I run the GRC team at Abnormal AI. So that means we are responsible for maintaining all of our certifications and attestation reports. So currently at Normal AI, we are certified in ISO 27001, 27701, and the new 42001 on the AI standard. We just recently passed that this past summer, as well as we go for our annual SOC 2 report. So that all falls under my jurisdiction. Also, your traditional areas of GRC like risk management, helping a bit with vulnerability management, training, policies, procedures, all kind of touch my team. I like to sometimes think of us as like an extension of the governance, no pun intended, of like what the CISO kind of wants. So like or the CIO in my organization, we're a bit of a combination. So we kind of are the arm that helps foster, progress, I guess, and change in the organization.
You, Evan, are the one who gets to deal with people like our buddy TJ here when they come knocking on your door to do your annual assessments and all that fun stuff. I'm curious, with those relationships, what's your view on auditors?
I think that's spicy questions. All right, no, that's a good one. That's one. You must hold on. You must have asked ChatGPT because that was the first. That was like the first question it told me to ask.
No, I truly didn't, but I am curious because I know I probably have some differing opinions on that relationship than some people do, but curious of Evan's thoughts.
I think it depends. It's obviously a very general question. I could take this a lot of different ways. There are certain auditors. It depends on where you come from. If you're coming from, I won't try to use names, but there are certain organizations where like your auditor is more or less an individual 2 or 3 years out of college with a checkboard, with a clipboard, who's just trying to like make sure that they can hit a mark and see some evidence. And then you have certain auditors who you can tell are actually more well versed and experienced and actually are diving in to your answers, to your evidence. I had the privilege of working with Troy more on the internal side. So those are the auditors that I like more, where it's like more of an internal auditor, so more of an extension of my team. So it's more honest and forthcoming, because at the end of the day, I would say you want to have a healthy adversarial relationship with an auditor, right? Like I'm not trying to be friends with them, and I'm trying to present my organization the best possible way I can, with them still being able to mark off their checkboard. But it's challenging sometimes, right? Because I've been in audits before where I feel like I have more experience and knowledge than the person on the other end of the phone call, and yet they're the ones who have to make a judgment call about whether a piece of evidence I'm presenting satisfies the request, or a policy falls in line with the standard. So it's definitely a complicated relationship, and I think it just depends more on the auditing firm that you utilize.
Yeah, I agree with that. I hear a lot of times people say that they just want their auditor in the door and out the door as quickly as possible. And to some degree, I understand that. But 9 times out of 10, it's what shows up in those reports that helps me to get the funding or the resources I need to improve the program. So I really actually enjoy those relationships and conversations. But
Yeah, see,
I agree.
No, I agree with you in part. I think something, that I've been learning in my career that's been taught to me is, I think the in the door, out the door is the relationship that you want to have with like your external auditor, right? Like I think it's my responsibility as the manager of GRC to do my best to present abnormal in the best way possible as it falls in line with the standards. It's really more, again, where I was working with Troy, when like on an internal perspective, like if you are working at a company where you bring in like an external party to do your internal audits, your internal assessments, that's really where it's like open up all the doors, open up all the windows, show them everything, and use that. I'd rather you have a very hefty internal audit report that shows all of the holes, so that I know, to your point, to use to get funding, or to allocate resources, or to get on engineering's pipeline to, make this change or to do that, Whereas like for the external audits, like my job, no matter what I know is like hiding underneath the covers, is to present the company in the best possible way and to try and avoid any nonconformities, anything negative that might go against. So like, I would say I treat it a little bit different, whether it's internal or external.
Sure, yeah. You definitely don't want to pull back the curtain too much and get a qualified opinion. Troy?
Well, yeah, that's true. But I wonder.
But like, do qualified opinions even exist anymore?
Did you see
I just reviewed
All right, well
my
played.
first qualified opinion in the longest time last week, and it blew my mind.
Actually, back to your question prior, I think I've recently asked ChatGPT, like, where would I find if it says a qualified opinion? Because every SOC report I read, it looks like it's clean. So tell me that somebody's hiding this under somewhere. But yeah, definitely, it seems like it's too good to be true out there sometimes in the SOC world.
Yeah, no, it was plain as day language written. This is a qualified opinion. I was like, dang, page 3 just throwing it right in my face. Yeah, it was the first one I'd seen in a while, and I was like, am I reading this right?
But like, this is an interesting conversation because you both are on the other side. So this is interesting for me to listen to because it's like, if you know that the external audit might not be going as deep as like an internal audit, and you're looking at some other company's SOC 2 report, but you know like how your own SOC 2 report is, and like, hey, like maybe like, do you instantly is that why people like just stop relying on these things, or like what?
No,
like where's the balance
flawed.
here? Because this is I think part of the big issue with all compliance is that people are afraid to show the holes, so they just want an easy audit with a piece of paper that says I'm good, because my customers will get upset if they see a qualified opinion that comes 1% of the time now.
No, I agree with you. Like, more of what you're getting at is that the whole third-party risk management approaches by relying on attestation reports is flawed, is fundamentally flawed. And I'd agree with you, but then I'd also argue it would be very hard. Everybody has their own risk appetite, right? It'd be very hard for a business out there to adhere to all these standards that every single one of their customers want them to do, right? So there has to be some type of happy medium. That's why sometimes I would argue potentially like a certification maybe holds more value than a report, because like it's a little bit more, do you do this, yes or no? Like it's black and white. Did you pass this because you're adhering to all these controls, yes or no? Like black and white, where maybe there's more ambiguity like in a SOC report. But yeah, there's no easy answer here. And then also you have to think about the resources, right? So like right now my team, I have a team of 4. We have one person who's dedicated to third-party risk management. But think of all the vendors that a SaaS-based cybersecurity product like Abnormal has. Like we have tons of vendors. Like we don't have the team or the resources to really investigate to like all the nitty-gritty details, like all the security posture of every single one of our vendors. So there has to be a little bit of faith almost, and like due diligence, obviously. But yeah, it's a flawed system. It's a flawed program. I don't have the answer for how we fix it, but it's definitely not foolproof is what I would say.
No. Go ahead, Kendra. I know that you have a lot going on. I can see you're thinking. Go. You're ready to.
Oh man, is it that obvious when my brain is on? Dang. It must otherwise just look like. No, I actually was talking to a candidate for a GRC role that I have open today, and I mentioned the qualified opinion on a SOC 2 report, and she was like, "It feels like you have to like actively try to suck to get a qualified opinion anymore." And I was like, yeah, that kind of makes me think that company may have just been like, hey, we should go for SOC 2, and maybe fell for some of those automation vendor traps. Sorry. Came out weird.
I'll tell you why too. One of my fears of why it is that way is if you think about it, getting a SOC 2 report, going through a SOC 2 audit, it's a service that you're buying from another company, right? So like the external auditor that we use does not want to upset us, right? So they're also motivated by the dollar to do everything they possibly can to keep us happy. What's going to keep us happy is to make sure that we have an unqualified opinion, right? So there is, honestly, unless there was some governing body that came in that was completely unbiased, that did not have any type of monetary or business relationship gain to be had, if they were the ones issuing the report, then maybe you would see a little bit more transparency in reporting. Maybe there would be more reports that are showing negative things. But I think while we are in this model where you're hiring somebody to come in and give you a report, they're always going to be biased where they don't want to upset the client. They want to keep your client coming back for more and more. And you're going to upset the client if you give them a bad report, but then they have to go to their vendors and then giving them like a bad name. So the whole ecosystem, you could argue, is flawed.
Now let's dive into Troy's ethics.
You sound like everything I would already be saying. So I don't even know how to respond to this. Other than ethics, I think Kendra's right. It's hard, right? As an auditor, that is really hard to do, right? Like, how do you not be biased, right?
You can't not be, yeah, because you ultimately, listen, you're, as an auditor, you're a company, right? Like, the goal of a company is to obtain business, to retain business, to make money, right? It's a conflict. I don't think anybody's to blame. That's just how it's set up. That's why I would argue, and I've spoken about this before, is that a real mature organization is not just trying to build their compliance, their GRC program, their information security program, just to meet the standards of a framework, to make sure that they're good for SOC 2. A real mature organization is going to take that as, that's the baseline, like that's the foundation for which we build our program off of. But a company that takes security seriously is going to be more stringent, is going to have more controls that go more into the weeds, because they know that the report itself is flawed.
You know, there's one, I'm just thinking about it since I started my own firm, right? So I can understand this bias, right? Like I need to keep clients. Yeah. But there's one like solution, I think, to that. And it's like, if it'd be hard to implement, but you could force audit firms to have an outside person do a QC review. If let's say it's a small firm, okay, that client makes up X% of their revenue, they have to have an outside person do a QC review, like somebody's not even at their company. Or if they have like a partnership model where like they have to manage a certain quota of revenue, like if it's more than a certain percentage of that partner's quota, then like another, maybe not outside, maybe the big firms could have like another office do it, right? But something like where it's like you could do those things and force that on companies, but it'd be hard to enforce, but you could make rules like that.
I thought about that before, but I actually think that in my opinion, you're halfway there, because that's still flawed, right? Because like, even if your firm were then to hire a third party to go and check your work, then that relationship still is flawed, because that third party that then you would, assuming, would pay to QC your work, wants to keep you happy. So you're really just like kicking the responsibility down the line. And I don't want to sound like
right.
I don't want to sound like a big government proponent, but to me, the only solution there is really having some potentially like unbiased third party, potentially like government entity where you have to submit a report to, and they checked and they have no monetary motivation, no business motivation. All they are seeking is, does this evidence, does this policy, does this portfolio satisfy the requirements here, yes or no, and give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down and give you like a stamp of, yes, you did your job as an auditor, now go give that report back to the client.
Yes.
Otherwise, I don't know how you get it.
So ChatGPT?
I used to say, let me go to AI. I would say, is the goal to eliminate it or reduce it to a reasonable level that it's at least controlled, right? I don't think we can ever have a perfect system. But in your eyes, if you knew, hey, at least as a company relying on this report, I knew that there's these controls and this trust in place. Yes, I know it could be flawed, but it's a little bit more trustworthy because I know that those are the rules. And maybe that helps from that perspective.
I agree. Outside of spinning up like another government agency or over body that having a CPA firm need to like get a peer review on a SOC 2 report before they issue it to a client, that definitely is stronger than the model that we have right now. The firm that we use, they want to take me out to the Yankee game. They want to like take me out to dinner. Like they're whining and dining me because they want to keep me as a client. And that also bleeds into the product and service that I'm buying from them. Like the more that we can check on that, the more you're actually going to get a legitimate report.
And you're right. There would be flawed relationships because you're going to pay an outside person. But I'm suggesting this knowing that it would eat into my profitability as a small firm. And I'm still suggesting that it's, and technically speaking, like you're supposed to build your quality management system as a CPA firm, and you're supposed to have it documented like when you need an outside QC to do this. So I've been thinking about this a lot. That's why I brought that up, because I'm like, maybe there are certain ones where we should do that because they're more risky to our firm. And as like, I have been thinking about that, but it'd have to be like much larger companies, but I don't think every firm is thinking like that, right? Like I think most people get into this, they're starting their firm, whatever their money, wherever they're not bootstrapping, that PE investment money, they have different priorities because the people they're reporting to that want to see revenue have different priorities. For me, I bootstrapped the firm. I came from the CPA world. I have two priorities. Yes, one, of course, is to make money, but I do have actually like a priority to make sure we're proud of our work and we're doing what we're supposed to be doing too. And I don't have to answer to investors right now, right? Like I can control
100%. But like the irony is that yes, and that's noble, but like how long does that last? Like the big players that people would probably argue a SOC 2 report from PwC or Deloitte might be worth more than from ABC CPA firm like that's down the street. But that big firm is way more biased, right? Because like they have way more people to answer to, like investors or partners or client relationships. Like it actually almost like works against you sometimes. Like it actually, the point for you, sometimes the more trustworthy, like smaller firm might actually be more transparent, more like true to the actual like cause of security. But again, to me, it all goes back to it's again like the stock reporting, getting your ISO certification. That's just table stakes. If you as an organization are evaluating a third party of yours, reading their attestation reports, seeing that they have certain certifications, like that's just beginning. If you really wanted to assess their security posture, like you have to do more. You have to dive deeper. And obviously there might not be an appetite for that. That's why things like the SOC 2 report exist, because companies just don't have the time and resources to allow every customer of theirs to audit their security practices. I get it. But I would argue for like bigger relationships with bigger clients, with bigger customers who provide large business needs. Maybe that is the answer, is just not taking the SOC 2 report on face value. It's more doing more of a due diligence. Like maybe the solution is building up like third-party risk management program more and not just relying on these reports.
We've said it before. I'll say it again.
I
Those
know.
reports are
I
just the
make a
ticket in the
podcast
door.
that tells everyone not to do SOC 2 reports, and that's my business. That sounds like the stupidest business.
No, so again, like I would argue it's not like not getting away with them is foolish too, right? Because you need something, like you need a conversation starter, right? Like you need something to provide some level of like even playing field. So totally getting rid of them is foolish because you think like Amazon's gonna let everybody just come in and be like, okay, answer my like own custom questionnaire and provide evidence for it. Like, no way. Like abnormally, we're not doing that either, right? Like we're at the level like we're not letting anybody just come in with your own questionnaire. Like we're gonna share with you our reports. Like we do answer like client questionnaires, like absolutely, but there's a range, right? We don't just like anybody off the street, send us over a questionnaire. There, you have to be at a level where we see the value in the business for us to entertain that, for us to spend the resources to answer those questions. So I wouldn't say getting rid of them is the answer. I would say I think it's more of a mentality or philosophy that needs to change within the security world of only relying on them as like the checkbox for third-party risk management. Like actually, if you really wanted to do due diligence on your vendors, like you have to dive deeper.
But even that, like, third-party risk management varies quite a bit from organization to organization. So you have to be willing and able to do the work internally to determine if this vendor or this particular category of vendor has access to certain data, like how do we want to evaluate them? And that becomes very complicated very quickly. So how are you all handling that at Abnormal, if you can go into that at all, or maybe you have some like best practices or things you can share? But if you're saying that the SOC 2 report or the ISO certifications are just table stakes and like kind of the barrier to entry, how do you take that a little bit further and say, this vendor has PII, this vendor doesn't? Like,
yeah, so it's hard. I would say there's no easy answer here, but I would say it's twofold, right? It's one is first off, identifying which vendors, rating vendors based off their criticality of what access they have to your information, to your data, to your trademarks, to your trade secrets, who within the organization has access to a third-party tool, what data might be coming in and out. So rating vendors based off of their criticality, and then trying to do more due diligence with them once they're up for renewal or review. I would argue even something as simple as reviewing a vendor on a more regular basis based off of their risk certainly takes it to another level of not just seeing a SOC 2 report and waiting for the next one to come out the following year, but to follow up, trying to dig in deeper. But I'd also put the onus on the organization for yourself, right? There are compensating controls that you can implement internally to limit your risk, right? Not only relying on the security posture of a third party, but making sure that you have a robust internal security program yourself to mitigate the risk, right? Everything is in security, in my opinion, should be viewed from like the lens of like risk management. Everything leads back to risk management. Like where can you reduce the risk to an acceptable level that the business can justify? It's not always going to be perfect, but like the combination of trying to figure out where you can dive deeper into vendors, but then also shoring up your own internal resources is probably like the best approach that you can do to decrease the risk. You're never going to get rid of it. But if you have, for example, a vendor that, I don't know, had some API connection of some database that was very critical to your product, how often are you internally doing access reviews? How often are you reviewing what type of privileges users might have that are accessing that? And you can't just say, oh, I'm using a third party, therefore I'm absolved of any security control on my end. I think it's like that combination of also saying, hey, I have a responsibility here to do what I can, and then trying to force their hand as much as you can. So it's definitely a balancing that.
yeah, makes a lot of sense. I have other questions, Troy or Elliot, if you don't.
You mean we're done bashing SOC 2 or no?
Never. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm kidding. Go ahead. I take it with pride, so don't worry about it.
You're the one that's trying to turn the tide and make me
I am starting to like,
hate.
wow, if you noticed on LinkedIn and show, but I'm actually trying to focus on the CPA firms. I think it's the CPA firms that are going along with all of it. They're the ones that are violating whatever rules, right? I mean,
Yeah.
and so it's your ethics, Kendra. Those are the like. At what
There you go. This is true. Troy stands for good. He's not just the SOC 2 meme king. He's the GRC meme king. Let's not forget
I'm the
that.
audit firm whisperer. I speak for the auditors. I feel like the lore app. Speak for the trees.
Adorable, adorable. All right, Evan. So without giving away specific vendor names, unless you want to plug some that you love, but what's in your arsenal? What makes your job easier? Please tell me there's an automation tool in there. Just kidding. I'm sorry. No, but I am genuinely curious. As obviously you've been part of building up the GRC program for Abnormal. Like, what have you found to be the most useful? Maybe if you even have some examples of things that you guys have spent money on and you're like, look, bit of buyer's remorse.
Yeah.
That's a spicy
hard.
question. I like it. Let's go.
Yeah, it's a spicy question. It's hard. We are, to answer part of a mini question that was in there, we are currently evaluating an automation tool that will help us foster this culture of audits are not a one-time thing, but something that should be evaluated on a regular basis so that I'm not scrambling for the last minute when an external audit comes around for evidence. That's more of something that like we are constantly collecting evidence for, constantly checking in on. To automate that. It's hard, right? So we use a vendor for like monitoring, for audit, for control monitoring, but it's based off of their own control framework. They set up a custom control framework. It's mapped to the standards that we elect it to be mapped to, and that's what they are monitoring us on. And it's challenging as we are in the process of reworking our internal primary control framework, as we like to call it, how useful those tools will be when we want to control, when we want to monitor based off of like our control framework. I know there are tools out there that do that, but it's challenging just from a perspective of making sure without developing something yourself. I don't think there's any one tool that's going to do everything for you. So you have to take with a grain of salt. And let's face it, if there was the perfect tool out there, I might be out of a job. Maybe half my team might be out of a job. So there is an element of maybe there's not the perfect tool because there is always going to be the need for a human element in it. That's what keeps me sleeping sound at night.
Yeah, yeah. We've got to keep the humans in the loop, that's for sure. But are there any tools like from maybe like access management or access reviews or anything like that? Like if that falls under the purview of your team that you find useful, or are you all still doing that manually?
No, we're not. We're using a tool called Zilla to do our access reviews, which I love, right? It takes a lot of the manual work out of it. You just have stakeholders that just go in and click and accept, and it prints out this nice audit report of this application had this many permissions, it was reviewed by this person, these many were revoked, these many were reinstated, and like it's very clear cut. The problem with all of these tools, right, even the tools that we have, they're all centered around, even as I just spoke around, they're all centered around the concept that internally at organizations, control owners know that they're control owners, they accept that they're control owners, and they understand the responsibility that comes with them being control owners. The reality of it is that's not the case. Like most of the time, it is teams like my team who are pushing that on other teams. They're almost, a lot of these tools are built under a false pretense that oh yes, there's this robust security culture internally and everybody knows their role, and don't worry, we can send this alert to this team because they're going to be the ones to fix it, but they know that they're responsible for it, and they know that we're monitoring it, and like all these assumptions that are made are just flat out wrong. Listen, like that's part of the mission that like myself and everybody at Abnormal is on from like a GRC perspective, to instill more of an ownership of controls and of like your own domain. But I think that's like a big flaw that I see with a lot of the GRC tools. It just makes assumptions that are just not based in reality.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Troy, you have anything tack onto that one?
In terms of tools, no, I just audit them. I don't use them.
No, it definitely makes sense. And on that same topic, I think you said a little while ago, it's you plus 4 others on your GRC team. Is that correct?
Right now, correct. Yep.
Okay. How is the like further development of tools with AI, especially as it relates to GRC, like making you think critically about how you grow your team as more and more of these processes are automated and simplified?
We're definitely not at the point yet where AI or tools are going to replace headcount. That's definitely, maybe in the long-term future, it's in a way, but I see AI and all these different tools as just like a way to help us more. Ultimately, like I need somebody to verify. Trust that verify is still very much the mentality that I have. I think tools can be used, all these, and obviously now every single tool under the belt is promising that they use some type of AI or just using ChatGPT for all the various things that I have to do within my world. But I see that more as us becoming more efficient at our jobs. I see that as, for example, we use a tool called Glean internally. It's kind of like an internal Google, if you will, powered by AI that connects with Google Drive and Slack and all of our different resources where, I can just say like, hey, what's our network diagram? And it'll automatically pull up like the Confluence pages that have like our updated network diagram. So, I see these tools, to me, that's an example of a tool making GRC more self-serving. Maybe you don't need somebody on the engineering side of the house that dedicates resources to GRC anymore because we have proper documentation and we have tools that can kind of help us be more self-serving and do our jobs better. But I don't really see a place where, at least for now, where we're totally going to say like, hey, you don't really need this function anymore because we have X, Y, and Z tool.
Okay. That should make you sleep a little better, Troy. Another vote for
It is
AI
nice
not
that
taking
somebody is on my side, but I do think you were right that it won't. There's still need humans, but I do think our skill sets as GRC professionals will definitely change because of it. So just like when the cloud happened, like you need to learn cloud security, or you would be left behind.
You see, where I would
It
push
doesn't
back
agree
on that
with
is
that. That's good. I spoke too soon.
Yeah, see, because where you're heading at is, I think, another theme that like I've constantly seen on like forums like LinkedIn, and this is about how the transformation of GRC is to become like a GRC engineer, right? Like it's not enough to just live in the governance world. You also have to be proficient in Python kind of thing. I would argue the irony to me there is that those probably same people would also be the ones that argue because of AI, you don't really need to learn how to code anymore because like you could just go to ChatGPT and give me like, I want X, Y, and Z program and give me a bunch of lines of code. And you don't actually need to, like the need to be a programmer. I think it's valid to say like that is more dangerous. So I don't think that GRC is going to be replaced or that we're going to need to transform. Actually, what I think GRC is going to need to do is to double down on what GRC should really be doing is like leaning into the soft skills, right? It's like, it's really being that conduit between engineering and senior leadership of explaining like what our requirements are, like how we need to meet our requirements are, like what our risks, what the risk is, and iterating over that. It's not so much that, hey, you need to now learn how to code because I can just dump whatever. For this past audit that we had, like I would take audit evidence and dump it into ChatGPT and tell me like, okay, tell me what this is showing me, right? I don't have to be an expert in engineering to say, okay, what is this code in GitHub that I just got from the engineering team for? What is this showing me? And it will give me very simple, explain it to me like I'm in third grade. We've all like prompted ChatGPT and it gives you very clear, okay, this is a code change and you can see like this line of code like is depicting this and this line of code is depicting that. So what I get from that is actually what I need to do better, what my team needs to do better is like hone in on our soft skills. It's making the connections and the relationships, the relationship value, the explaining things. It's being that gatekeeper, being on the front lines with the external auditor. Like that's what's actually more important. That's what's going to be, in my opinion, like where GRC drives, because I'm going to have tools that help me explain the technical stuff.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. I just meant you have to understand the risks of AI and how your organization is using it and how do we build this and do this responsibly, right? I think it's another aspect of GRC that if I'm leading a GRC team, like understanding those types of risks and how our company is mitigating those risks and what governance we have in place and how we're building this, it's those types of skills I was referring to. I agree. I don't think you need to be, you can either use AI to help you with the GRC engineering part, or you could probably hire that skill, right? Find somebody that can help you do that. Not everybody needs to know how to do that, I agree, but you probably should be aware of it and how it can help you, right?
Sure, yeah. Just, of course, it helps me when I'm talking with the infrastructure team that I have. I used to work at a telecom company that like I was a network engineer at one point, like that I understand like the basic makeups of a computer network, right? Like obviously that helps me converse with those people, but that doesn't mean I need to be an expert. And it's the same thing because now, like I would argue, we have these tools that actually help me sound like an expert, help me understand like an expert. That's where really, I mean, I prepared for my audit every day using ChatGPT. Every time I have an external audit coming up, like I dump in evidence and I know what the topics are going to be. And I say, okay, like give me talking points about all this, explain this to me. And I don't need to have the head of infrastructure engineering on a call with me. Like I can explain it myself, just also my basic knowledge and leveraging like certain AI tools. So yeah, I forgot, I've seen people talk about it's like companies back in the day when the advent of the internet or using Google, if you didn't adapt to the times, if you didn't modernize, like you were left behind. And see AI as the next iteration of that, right? It's how do you use those tools internally to help and become more efficient? I don't view these tools as a replacement for humans.
Cool. I do think we have to get going here, but I have one last question. We'll end it on a light note so you can help people. What is, since I think you said you transitioned into GRC, right? So there's a lot of people that are always asking, how do I transition into GRC? So what's the one thing you would ask somebody, you would tell somebody, let's assume they're coming from a technical background, IT. Just assume they're coming from that background. What's the one, Kendra said, oh, she had to go. Okay. Kendra had to leave. But anyways, what's the one tip you would give them for somebody trying to, or advice for someone trying to transition into GRC from an traditional IT background?
That's the one piece of advice. If you already had technical knowledge, first off, I'd say that you have a leg up on the game. My initial school in life, I was totally non-technical. I was a poli-sci major. I was going to go to law school. So like I got started into technology. I was a total novice. But I would say, I think what suited me best in my career and what advice I'd give to other people is honing in on the soft skills, right? It's using your network, reaching out to people, never saying no to a coffee or to a lunch or to a meetup. Sometimes the road isn't super clear, but I think with will and determination, that's how you make that transition. So it's not, hey, go do this or go get this certification. It's all of the above approach. Yeah, maybe getting your CISSP or your C-RISC or some type of certification gives you a leg up in a conversation. But it's also just reaching out to people, ping people on LinkedIn. I get pinged all the time from just random people trying to one-off, get involved in security chapters and GRC chapters and local chapters. It's networking and being persistent. I think that really helps you when you're looking to make a transformation like that.
I love it. And it's a great idea. That's a good way to end it. Elliot, usually you do your part here, but I don't know.
I can hit the stop button. Is that what you're looking for? You want me to
I guess, Evan, real
add
quick.
a nice little bow?
I'll do it. Elliot usually asks, where can people get in touch with you? What's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, I forgot about that. My bad.
Wow. On LinkedIn is the best way. I am an avid Twitter user still, but I don't know if that's work appropriate. But yeah, LinkedIn I would say is the best way to get in touch with me.
Cool. We appreciate it. And it was a
Thank
fun
you, guys.
conversation. Hopefully it was fun for you. We'll call it fun.
Absolutely. Yeah. Hope I'm invited back.
Next episode, part 2. Let's go.
Thank you for listening to GRC Uncensored, the podcast, where Troy and Kendra know their shit, and our producer just talks shit. To learn more about GRC, go to grcuncensored.com, subscribe to our newsletter, or join our community on Reddit. Viewpoints expressed during the show do not reflect the brands, employers, or companies of our hosts, guests, or sponsors.